When they didn't know what to do, God sent a prophet.
And that's Robin. Robin is that prophet. This is just insane, dude. This guy needs help.
Prophet gave them prophetic instructions that would have made no sense at all in the natural.
So it's interesting to me that he says prophetic instructions wouldn't have made any sense in the natural. Actually, prophets in the Old Testament made complete sense. They were very clear. There was no ambiguous nature about what they said or believed or whatever. They said, you're going to fucking die if you don't, bleh, or you're going to face the wrath of God if you this or that or whatever. There's no confusion about it. But what Robin Bullock is conflating this with, if I get 3, a star, a flower, and a mushroom, I should get a couple of extra lives for that, right? Anyway. But Robin Bullock is conflating prophecy with apocalypticism. Okay, now there's an old writing genre called apocalyptic writing, apocalyptic genre, similar to romance or fantasy or sci-fi or whatever. It's a genre of writing that existed back then that doesn't really exist today, right? And you can see the genre forming out throughout different Bible books. The book of Daniel is when the apocalyptic genre, book of Daniel is where it's most formed out. And it was really weird stuff. Like, here, this is Daniel chapter 7. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream, and visions passed through his mind as he was laying in bed. He wrote down the substance of his dream. Daniel said, in my vision at night I looked, and there before me were the 4 winds of heaven churning up the great sea. 4 great beasts, each different from the others, came up out of the sea. The first was like a lion. It held the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a section where it talks about the little horn. While I was thinking about the horns, there before me was another horn, a little one, which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being and a mouth that spoke boastfully. Okay, what does that mean exactly? This is part of the apocalyptic genre of writing. It didn't mean it was prophecy. This wasn't prophecy. This was a writing style that a lot of ancient writers adopted for a variety of reasons. To say something in a more indirect way to avoid persecution. No evidence that that's what Daniel was doing or the book of Revelation was doing. Or to kind of draw out a specific point. I mean, there are a billion different reasons to write in the apocalyptic genre. Plus, it's kind of interesting, right? Catches readers' attention and stuff. Book of Revelation is also written in the apocalyptic genre. So what does this mean? The book of Daniel, contrary to popular belief, was actually written not during the exile period of Babylon, where Babylon took over Israel and shipped a bunch of Israelites out. That's not when it was actually written. It purports to have been written around that time, but it very clearly, the book of Daniel, talks about the king of the era around the year 160 to 200 BCE. Well, since it's BCE, it should be backwards. 200 to 160 BCE. It talks about the king of that era. Antiochus is his name. And I believe that it was Greece that controlled things at the moment. Yes, he was part of the Hellenistic Syrian Empire, i.e. from Greece. Hellenistic means Greek. And he was one of the kings that was responsible for the area of Israel, and he's a complete monster. He was ordering them to do, the Jews, to do absolutely awful things. That's what it says here. The little horn had eyes like the eyes of a human being and a mouth that spoke boastfully. It was a little horn because he was part of a greater whole, being just a king in the Greek Empire. The symbolism is part of the style of writing. So the little horn, this is a weird translation. I don't know why it's saying spoke boastfully. It actually says the little horn spoke obscenities about God's people, or something to that effect. Spoke blasphemous against God's people. That king, Antiochus, the little horn in this book, famously tried to destroy Jewish culture and heritage and unity by ordering them to Hellenize, to Greekify, to be more Greek. And the book of Daniel was written around the time that the Maccabean revolt was taking place, surprisingly. It is actually the oldest, it is actually the most recent Old Testament book that we have. Like I said, we know it was Antiochus because it talks about Antiochus pretty directly later in the book of Daniel. A couple other things I wanted to mention about this. Antiochus, as a king, in his efforts to Greekify, to Hellenize the Jews, ordered them to sacrifice pigs at the altar in Jerusalem, in the temple, which is just a massive slap in the face, obviously, right? He also ordered them not to circumcise their children, and he ordered them to erect a temple to Zeus in their temple. Erect an altar of Zeus in their temple, because he was trying to force them to give up their heritage, basically. And that's actually why the Maccabean revolt happened, the source of Hanukkah. The Jews fought that order. They literally fought that order. I mean, they fought a revolt. And when they won the revolt, they noticed that, in the temple, they only had like a day's worth of oil left in their lamps. But the oil lasted 7 days or 8 days or whatever it was. And that's why they burn lamps for 8 days on Hanukkah, or 7 days, I forget now. Because it's a representation of the fact that, God provided for them, let them win the battle, and then provided after they won the battle by keeping the lamps lit. So anyways, that's what this was about. Now, later in this book of Daniel talks about the horn being crushed and then reappearing and then being destroyed once again. The reason he says that is because when this was written, Antiochus, the king, had already been killed. But there were rumors that Antiochus had actually been in hiding somewhere else, and people kept coming and claiming that they were Antiochus coming out of hiding when they weren't. So Daniel believed that Antiochus was going to come back. Antiochus Epiphanes is his full name. He believed that he was going to come back, and so he wrote that into the book, that the little horn comes back, even though he never did. So anyway, that's a little bit of a history of the apocalyptic genre, and one good example of it. The book of Revelation is very, very similar. The book of Revelation talks about things in sets of 7. That's a dead giveaway clue to what it was talking about. The fact that it keeps talking about 7 things, 7 bowls of wrath, 7 this, 7 that. It was talking about Rome, because Rome was known as the city on, or the city on 7 hills, I think was what it was called. It's very, very obvious what these people meant if you look at the context of the time. So anyways, prophets of God didn't speak in riddles the way that Robin Bullock wants you to believe. Apocalyptic genre writing was written in riddles that were easy to understand for people of that time and place. But the prophets were pretty clear. When a prophet spoke in God's name, they said, God will send a good harvest, or God is angry with you because you're blah, 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 whatever. At no point, to my knowledge, did a prophet ever speak ambiguously and confusingly that way in an attempt to make people believe that, I don't know, confuse them, make them think they knew what they were talking about, blah, blah, blah. Prophecy and revelation, prophecy and apocalypticism are two completely different things.